What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Young Adult Podcast. Yes, it is official. We are back.
Official.
From our 6-month hiatus.
And our live studio audience is thrilled.
Our live studio audience is back. Guys, we have a lot to talk about.
A lot of updates.
A lot of updates. As you can maybe see, or maybe you heard that raspy voice in the background.
Hey,
we have a new team member and a new member of our podcast. A lot of applause happening today.
Yeah.
A lot of applause.
Feels good.
Guys, we want to introduce you to, you probably already know her, but we want to welcome Casey Mexico as an official member of the Young Adult Podcast.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Good.
She's here.
I'm here.
It took a minute.
I want the record to show that I was not told this would be on film, so I'm wearing a sweatsuit that I would never wear typically.
I would have it no other way.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Didn't know it was
this
a
gets
visual
people.
medium as well.
That's my bad.
Well, it looks
Honestly,
great.
it's my bad. It was my fault. I should have told you.
Okay, love you.
You're coming into this blind.
Thanks.
We're throwing you into it.
I'm channeling my inner Chad Brugman, and I'm like, I'm just going to wear shorts no matter what. So,
Chad Brigman getting in a shout out.
dude, I love Chad. Chad, if you're listening all the way down in Houston, we love you. We miss you. Casey, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, okay. I'm from California. People say that's my
If you
entire
can't tell.
personality.
What part of California?
Santa Barbara area.
Okay.
Would that be Northern California or Southern California?
SoCal with a little central
Okay.
central coast. Wine country, as they say.
Is Central California a thing? Is that like a
Yes.
real thing?
It is.
Who's in
Where does
Central
that-
California?
Me.
But
Try
like, where
to-
does that fall in like the argument of
Okay.
like Northern California versus Southern California? 'Cause
Is
I
that
know that's a
is
big
that
debate.
Sacramento?
Oh, no, gosh, no. Oh,
No, that's
Well, 'cause
Northern
Sacramento
California.
is people that can't afford to live in San Francisco. And they like the heat, I think.
I feel like Sacramento is like the lost city of California.
Yeah, and it's our
My
capital.
cousin lives there.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah,
That's right.
They must have a really good personality. Just kidding.
she's great. Mariah, you probably do
She's
listen to this.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
your cousin's awesome.
But we hate Sacramento apparently.
No,
on
no,
this
I'm just saying.
podcast.
I'm not saying I hate it. I was just like, I feel like when you think of California, that's like the last city that comes to mind, but
Right.
it's like a big city in
It's huge.
California.
Yeah.
But it's not Central.
No.
Central's its own world.
Okay, here's the thing. Central is like sleepy beach town, and everyone forgets about it. They're like, I hate California. I hate LA. I hate San Francisco. I'm like, it's a long state.
Yeah.
That like all the East Coast states, there's like what, 8 of them that border could fit in California. So I'm from like the Virginia, like if you were in line. Connor,
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
like a sibling state.
From opposite
Except
sides.
I feel like we're a lot. Well, Virginia's
Guys.
very, very weird. You're either in the country and it's very kind and
Yeah.
southern, or you're in DC and people will cuss you out in every language from across the world because there's so many different like nations represented in Washington DC. So
You're gonna cuss me out.
Guys, we have like East Coast versus West Coast right here.
Yeah.
Look at you two.
Connor knows
Look at
it's the
us.
West. Come on.
not a shot.
Connor loves like big city East Coast.
Prettier beaches. I love yelling at people. Like I love going to New York, and I mean, growing up, we used to go to New York like city all the time, and you drive through this bridge through New Jersey, and right as you're like going through the bridge, it's like it's illegal and you will be fined. Or there's like a sign as you go like under this tunnel. It's like no honking your horn in New York. It's like illegal, whatever. As you're like going under this sign, you just hear like. Like I'm walking here, like you know, like all this stuff, and I'm just like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
These are your
like,
people.
Yes, I love it. Erin gets very overwhelmed. She could never live in New York. I could live in a
That's
studio.
because her
in
and
New
I
York
are from the
rest of my life.
suburbs of Colorado,
The burbs.
which Connor would consider the Midwest. But
I
it's-
consider this the Midwest.
It is the
my
Midwest.
gosh.
It is.
We can't get into this.
It is in the middle
It
of the
is
state,
not. It's
kind
the
of
West.
country, kind
this
of
is
to
the
the
Wild
west.
West.
It's the middle. It's the middle.
My husband is from the Midwest, like Minnesota, Missouri, Illinois, like those states. Those are like the Midwest.
In my mind,
That is Midwestern cuisine. I feel like the Midwestern mentality, to me, this is terrible because I love Colorado, but Colorado is like the fake West to me.
The fake
Because
West.
everybody wants to kind of be Californian.
I do think Colorado doesn't know who it is as a whole.
Yes. It's a very
There's no
confused
like
state.
one archetype of human.
No, there's
We're
a
in a
lot.
melting pot.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
And then
that
like
come here.
between cities too. Like Boulder is its own thing. Fort Collins is a completely different one. The Springs, like we're versus Denver. It's because people like you guys move here.
Okay, these United
make it better.
States.
And make it better.
Don't get me started on natives, Luana. I'm gonna lose followers.
Anyway,
for you guys.
go back where you came from. Just kidding. I love that you're both here.
Oh my gosh.
We
Even
make
though
your
you,
life better.
You're welcome.
and if you're listening to this and you live in Colorado but you're not from here, I love you too. I was just kidding.
And if you're from Sacramento, I like the Kings. I do. You guys just signed DeMar DeRozan, so good for
Connor,
you
you're
guys.
not allowed to bring up Sacramento one more time.
I don't hate Sacramento. I've never been. I feel like nobody's ever been. And I don't mean that as like a mean
I was
thing.
in a wedding there, and it was the worst weekend ever. It's like 118 degrees. My hair blew up.
I forget that California is also like in a desert.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I
If you're
forget
not at
that.
the beach.
People also like country music there, like a little inland. It's not just coast.
That's crazy.
So California doesn't know who it is.
It knows. It's just very divided on what it should be.
You literally said at the beginning of this podcast, you're like, people think that that's my entire personality. And then we've made you talk about California for the first
proud
5
of it.
minutes of this.
I can't afford to live there. Okay.
All right. So you're from California.
We nailed that down.
You're from California. Give us like one or two other facts that we
Okay.
won't extrapolate for 10 minutes.
All right. I like sports of every kind.
Okay.
Soccer.
What's your best sport and your favorite sport?
Okay.
Are they the same?
Oh, no. Oh. My favorite sport and my best sport is soccer.
Okay.
But beach volleyball doubles is a close second.
Okay.
I know, Milana.
I can't do the
together.
sand.
She doesn't like the sand.
I
It's
don't.
fine. I like it
Because I'm from the
because-
Midwest.
Yeah, you are. Those are the top sports. I love some 14ers out here, some intensity.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you meet Casey, she'll try and bully you into coming on a 14er with her.
I've never felt more alive than when I'm in just slight pain for long periods of time.
Oh, really?
Climbing towards the top.
I'm like so proud that I've never hiked a 14er.
Connor, let's go.
If we've said
Never.
this so many times, Connor has been like, if you see me hiking, I've been kidnapped. Like,
Yeah.
say, call 911.
Yeah.
Connor, please.
No, I will never.
right.
I will never.
Try it.
Never. I'll drive up it and
Yeah,
meet
okay.
you up there.
There you go.
Meet you at the top.
I just don't know why. I feel like 90% of hiking, people have heard this, like my rant. You're looking at your feet most of the time.
Not if you're good at it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I like my feet.
I'm like, you just look at your feet. Like, so you
Do
don't
you
trip
listen to
and
music?
fall.
Like, what do you do?
No, I listen to the sweet sound of my body just working. You know what I mean?
Case.
So you're a serial killer. That's your third interesting
Literally.
fact.
Maybe, and then sometimes I'll start running if it's too easy.
Okay.
No, you don't have any of these?
Never. I do enjoy trail running. I've done that with a friend.
Same.
But
Okay.
like, I need to be able to drive to the trail in like 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm not going to like venture out my whole day to
Right.
do a trail
So that's
run.
the thing with Colorado. Like, if you want to, you got to drive and then you got to hike
Yeah,
because it takes a minute from Denver to get into the,
that's true.
yeah.
I like the pain. I think food tastes better after you work out hard. Everything's better. Your sleep.
That's true. Yeah,
Well,
you
all
will
the
sleep.
things you do and enjoy, but add a really hard thing right before.
You feel like you have to earn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well,
Stuck in my
guys,
childhood. Trauma.
transitioning from hiking and Casey, let's talk about failure.
Failure.
No, as we were kind of talking through a bunch of different ideas as we bring back the podcast, which if you've made it this far, thank you for staying with us. We're going to talk we're going to talk about a lot of cool things. We're going to talk about in the upcoming weeks, self-development and personal discovery, all the Enneagrams and all the different tests you can take. We're going to tell you how to vote. Not really, but we will be talking about our political climate.
Yeah.
And kind of how to navigate this incredibly weird, tumultuous, tensious, is tensious even a word? Tension-filled. Contentious,
There you go.
tension-filled season of life. We're going to be covering a lot of different stuff. We are officially back, and we are going to be posting
business.
about every other week is the goal. So 2 podcasts a month for you guys. But we thought a good one to come back on was talking about failure, our failure to post content for 6 months.
Honestly.
No, everybody experiences failure. And I feel like as a young adult, as a young professional in your 20s, maybe you're in college or maybe you're a post-grad, I feel like there's a ton of pressure on your life to figure out your life and minimize failure as much as possible. And so, I don't know, do you guys have any, looking back, we are a little older. Our hair is turning a little gray. Do you guys remember, that pressure at all of like trying to have your life figured out, coming out of college, post-grad, having to make what feels like some of the biggest decisions of your life and hoping you don't make a bad decision and eventually waste a bunch of years and fail at something?
Right.
I don't know. Do you remember feeling that feeling of like, I can't fail at this?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I feel like right then too, there's like a certain track that maybe people see in our society for your life. And for me, I was in school like 3.5 years into a major that I was like, frick, I got it wrong. Like, I don't want to do this with my life. I don't know what to do. I had already like transferred schools. I had already like made the changes. And now I'm like, oh no. And being like, well, nobody can know. Like that I'm like need a redirect. Like I can't get it wrong because everybody else, you know, everyone's graduating and the year 2018 and I'm not going to be if I change majors. And so there's like a lot of pressure around that time in my life. And then, you know, leaving school and doing a unpaid internship at Red Rock Church would probably definitely be considered a failure by my peers at the time. So there's like a lot of pressure around, I think, those like decisions that really define the trajectory of the rest of your life. Plus everybody's kind of on that track. Yeah. Like all throughout kindergarten through senior year, everybody's kind of on the same track. And then people start to like veer off. And then so there's more of that comparison. And I think it's really easy to be like, I'm failing.
No, the comparison part kicks in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I cultivated this phrase that I think was like a way to gaslight or trick myself into thinking failure was
just
like,
gaslight yourself.
I just thought failure when you're in it would be like funnier and cuter and more like, oh, me just stumbling around with my friends and like, oh, I couldn't afford to get gas this week and working 2 part-time jobs. And like in hindsight, you look back and you're like, that was such, like, those were the times, you know, like sharing a room with 4 people. But my phrase was, if it's funny later, it's funny now. And that was
that's
really
good
like,
perspective.
Yeah, it was cute in the beginning, and there was just a moment where I was like, that's the stupidest phrase like, I've ever... Like, at some point, it doesn't work, right? Like, shame creeps in.
Right.
Yeah.
When you do look at somebody else's life, and it looks like they have, like, a real roadmap to, like, becoming what they want to be.
Yeah.
Right.
You're, like, you feel like you're on a playground just trying a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
seeing
real.
what sticks.
For real. Do you guys, before we really dive into, like, the meat of this, do you guys have... like a personal story, not like of a major failure.
Tell me your deepest failures and your shortcomings
like
as a human.
Most recent failures. I remember, it haunts me to this day. I had this incredible concept for a message where I sometimes I can get super ethereal on things and like
I
really
liked
kind of
this
spiral down the rabbit
message.
hole. It was a relationship series, and I've done so many relationship series in my life. And at some point, I'm just like, guys, we've got nothing new. Like, you know, like.
Right. You're like, I've talked about it all.
Yeah, it's just the truth kind of stays the same, and the guidelines are still kind of like the guardrails are still kind of the guardrails that'll help you. Like, and I know that there's new people and different people need to hear whatever, but I was like, how can I do something so different? And then I was like, why are humans like in love in the first place? Like, why is love like a thing?
You went like
very broad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I started studying like all these different religions and their take on like humanity's relationship to God and like all these different mythologies and what like the origin stories of like humanity and like how in like almost every single world religion or like mythological origin story, humans are created to work for like the gods to accomplish. And in like the story of Jesus, they're created for love.
Yeah.
Made from love for love. And it made so much sense in my mind. And I got up there and I was like, you know when like a light bulb goes off for you, but you can tell
Just people's
it's not going
faces
off
are
for
like
anybody else.
just blank, like
off.
staring through you.
Yeah. I remember just being like, wow, like on stage, like having a conversation with myself, like, this is not going well. And I have at least 30 minutes more.
Guys,
to, like,
it's on our
even
YouTube if you want
try.
to go watch it.
Is it like when your favorite band like usually has hits and they're trying like a new song and you're like, just play the good stuff?
Yes. Yes.
People are like,
just
we
do
want
what you're
your
good at.
We want
originals.
dating. We want you to tell us not to have sex. Like, and I'm just like, guys, I do that all the time.
Play your
Like,
greatest hits, Connor.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
But there will be a day where I
liked that
rework
message.
that message, and it's gonna be incredible.
So how did you feel getting
This
off stage?
relationship.
I mean, I drove to Taco Bell probably right after.
Yeah, that was
So that was like one where I was just like, people think I'm an
Food one of your
idiot.
coping. I'm just kidding.
Oh, dude! After a bad message, for sure.
Listen, if food isn't your coping message,
Yeah.
like if anybody listening to this, I'm thoroughly impressed with you. I'm like,
Yeah.
anytime I have a bad day, I'm like, I deserve ice cream.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, dude. Yeah. Anything like that, though, I'm not obviously asking you to air out your dirty laundry, but any funny failures that you remember of from
I
the
mean,
past year or two?
yesterday.
Okay.
So I recently became a mom and we're learning. Yeah. And so I have a almost 6-month-old baby. And yesterday, Sundays are always a little crazy of like getting him to church and coming here and like doing the thing because my husband's on staff. So he goes really early in the morning for rehearsals. And so it's like solo parent. And yesterday, I swear, like everything that could have gone wrong, like I like 2 separate blowouts, changing, like pooped in the car seat, all the things. And then I get in the car and I realize I don't have my keys and like, it like could have listed out everything yesterday. I texted Jake, I think I was aiming to be here for the 12. I got here at 12:38. And I just was like, I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I failed. I failed. And I told Jake, I was like, not one thing went right today. Absolutely not one thing. We tried to start him on solids and he was wrong about that too. It was like everything yesterday. So I think becoming a parent really humbles you and
Yeah.
very lighthearted. But at the same time, I'm like, if there's one more, how many blowouts before it's like my fault? It's like
Yeah.
something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like personal after a while.
Oh
You're like,
gosh,
something-
dude.
Oh, for sure.
I become a mom and now I just get on the podcast and talk about my baby's diapers. I apologize.
No, I'm sure there's some moms out there.
Casey, you've had to have a failure recently.
Yeah, I've had a million.
Make us feel
I
better.
think for me, I mean, you guys are probably perfectionists to some degree as well. So
A little
I
bit.
feel like
True.
sometimes I'll share failures with people and they're like, it's not real. And like no one else thought that you failed.
Yeah.
But my first sermon at YA, like being announced, I, for some reason, couldn't get it to print. And it was one of those where I like I've had a lot of lately, just like basic skills not doing well at. Like my whole sermon got deleted off my computer. And it's like,
That's
I feel
right.
like an adult that like knows how to save things or like, I don't know, just basic being an adult things. But I couldn't get it to print and I'm like drenched in sweat, like running around. We're in our production meeting. Like, what's your sermon about? I'm like, I wish I had it with me, you know? And
Yeah.
I honestly just felt super incompetent, or at least perceived incompetence, in a moment where I wanted to look competent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I think sometimes people are like, that's why people love you. Like, you're a little all over the place, a little crusty. I'm like, dude, thanks, but you suck. Like,
You're like, I don't want to be this
that's,
way.
that's Casey. That's your thing. It, like,
Yeah.
matches your hair. Like, whatever things people
the,
say.
the curly hair.
Yes, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the
Expectance.
thing I want to be, like, known for in my career. Like,
Yeah.
not together, a little all over the place, but kind of makes it work, and that's why people like you. And I'm like, cool. So those are moments where you, like, lean into it because that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
But then you go home and you're like, okay, I kind of suck at things, or I sucked at something, or
Not the
it's-
printer.
Yeah, and it's one thing when you're like, that's really funny, but then the next day when you're by yourself, you're like, oh, you like pay. That's when you really pay for it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like with your inner critic.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of have those like little failures that like accumulate throughout our day or things we mess up on. But I feel like there's a lot of pressure in your early 20s, college years to not have sort of like a quote unquote major failure. And you said something kind of before the podcast started, is that to really give a definition of failure, you have to have a clear definition of what you think of as success.
Right.
So talk about that for a minute. Like for somebody who has this maybe overarching fear of failing in their life, I think all that is kind of dependent on your definition of success. So go talk about that for a minute.
I think, when you look at our faith, I think you're like, okay, how does Jesus define success? How does the Bible define success? That's really cute. And I really wish, wish that was my internal working definition.
Right.
Yeah.
But to the degree that I feel like a failure in a lot of different areas really actually reveals to me what my actual working definition of success is internally, like the thing that really sticks. So for me, I think it's if you work hard enough, you can be anyone you want, you can get anything you want. I think it's all about, I think it's our cultural ideals, right? Like pull yourself up from your bootstraps. If you work hard enough, even if, your family was this or that, or you're handed this, well, somebody worked hard enough to get past it, so why can't you?
Yeah.
So I think it's super performance-based. When I think a lot of success in art is luck. And like the family you were born into or the life you're born into. I think there is some work ethic involved. But I guess for me, I think how do I transition my working definition to an actual biblical definition and actually live my life that way? So I want it to be like the fruits of the Spirit, right? Like, do I have peace in my life, joy in my life, self-control? Am I more loving than I was a year ago? Like, is God actually transforming me from the inside out?
Right.
Can I end a sermon and say, God, I worked really hard unto you. I leaned on you. I think I heard from you and I taught your word. And no matter what anyone says, that was successful.
Right.
Do I actually believe that?
Yeah. Do I subscribe to that?
Or does my anxiety after reveal that I don't really believe that at all?
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I want the Bible to define success for me. But I think I'm swimming in our cultural definitions much more than I think I am.
Right.
Okay.
So,
if you had to highlight cultural definitions versus what you would define as like biblical definitions of success, where would that line be? Because I don't know if you as girls get this as much as like I do, but my Instagram Explore page or like the little YouTube shorts that come up, it's always these dudes who are like, oh, I don't want to say their names, but like it's always it's self-empowering in some ways. Like you can do this, but then it's also like make $1 million,
right?
Have a 6-pack. You're not working hard. You're lazy. You're ugly. You're stupid. Stop being that. It's like kind of like no offense to my Reformed friends, but they're like the Reformers had the New Age reformers had like their moment like in the early 2000s where it was like, yell at me and tell me how dumb I am. And people were like, that's Christianity. Oh my God. Oh yeah. And I feel like there's like a new wave of that. Just
quit being lazy.
Yeah. And what's weird is like the message is good, right? But the delivery is almost like you suck. Yeah. Make something of your life. You're the only person that can like help you. And I actually think I can fall into that mindset quite a bit. Is like if anything is going to happen in my life, I'm going to have to be the one to make it happen. I can't trust people. I can't rely on people. I have to build this myself. I have to do this myself. And then not even searching for it. You just open your phone and there's some bald dude who's on steroids who's being like, expert. You're right. Like, like make your bed at 5 a.m. And it's like, bro, no, but but how do you, what do you feel like are maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest like siren calls of success in our culture versus maybe 1 or 2 of what the Bible would aim as success?
I think like knowing what you were made to do and doing it, right? I think
for the Bible or for
the society, right? Like, do you know that quote?
Finding
like,
your place in society.
The greatest need. You know that quote that's so popular when I was in college, everyone's like, you'll find your purpose when the world's greatest need and your greatest gift combine, and it's like sparkle, stars, unicorns. You're like, okay, what is the world's greatest need? Well, probably world hunger, probably probably unclean water. Like, should I pursue the water industry? Like, what? No, I'm not good at that. So for me, I don't know. I think that, finding like your calling, what you were made for,
Right.
but specific to you, not just like love people well.
Yeah.
And I think soft skills, like the personality hire, like I think you like having a hard skill. Like when I made a joke about how everyone's pre-med when they first start out college. And I'm like, you just said that so you could get more money at your grad parties.
Yeah.
Like my grandma would have given me a way bigger check if I was pre-med. But I mean it. Like I think a hard skill that's going to make money, but also be something that is humanitarian to some extent. I think like helping society isn't necessarily only a Christian value, right? Like if you're giving back, but also like doctor without board. I'm a doctor because I'm helping here and I can help everywhere else. Like I can give away my talents for free and they matter, you know? So I think that's one. I'm trying to think. I think also like getting married and having kids,
Right.
massively.
American dream.
And I think that is in Christianity as well, but
Right.
that's one of those fun little overlap ones where it's not allowed to be an idol because
Yeah.
God called it good. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, it still can be. But I think that's also in our society, decreasingly so in how that looks.
Right.
But still like finding a partner and having meaning.
Yeah.
Passing on your legacy of
Yeah.
children or whatever.
I think a huge thing I'm seeing, like even in young adults, is like low level like fame, like being an influencer, to
Having some sort of
degree.
influence, having some sort of like platform.
Yeah.
And
nothing makes me want to run in the opposite direction. Like
Yeah.
people thought I was quitting my job because I was like detagging myself from like a bunch of stuff on my Instagram. I was
that was me.
oh yeah.
I was like, are we fighting? Why am I getting notifications
No.
that you're untagging yourself?
Well, I was just like talking to some pastors and they're like, your social media is like part of your calling and your influence. You better be a good steward of it. Da, da, da. And then I started looking at all the pastors and all the young adults, like pastors and youth pastors' Instagrams. And I'm like, we are the same. Like we don't want to help people. Like,
Right.
like dark part like of our heart. We want more people to follow us, so we'll get booked at like somebody's like
Right.
event and then
Have influence.
pat ourselves on the back and say we're
Right.
influential. Like
Right.
build my big thing right now, and maybe this will change. Kind of like to repeat Ryan's words, like permission to change my mind. I'm like I want to build something with my life that brings a level of influence. I don't want to be influential because I tell people I'm influential,
Right.
if that makes sense. And I think, but all that to say, sorry, I'm not just trying to throw shade on everybody's like every pastor's like Instagram game. But I think there's a pressure from not being a pastor to being a doctor or an entrepreneur or whatever is like in some ways doing what you feel good about doing isn't enough. It has to come with some level of following and influence
Right.
if you're going to be successful.
Right.
I talk to some young adults like all the time. That's like, hey, we're trying to build this brand, build this, that. Like, I get it. All of it's real, but I see so much about building your personal brand. Right. And I get it. It's important if you are a business. But if you're just a human, like what happens if you're just a human? Do you have to be a brand as well? I think that's a huge weight that a lot of people
Right.
feel when it comes to feeling like a failure. Is like, I want to do this. I've got this gift. I've got this talent, but I've only got 300 followers.
Right.
Therefore, I must not be like successful at it.
It's so much. It's like not only is there the pressure to be successful these days, but it's the pressure to keep up the look and to have the like facade. Not even necessarily that it's a facade, but to make sure that like what you're portraying out there on social media is like successful, because your life is plastered just like everybody else's online, like the way it never has been before. And now, so if you're not successful, if you're not doing the things, or if you were pre-med and then you ended up not being pre-med, people can find that out now. And so there's almost like an added pressure of like having the image of success along with the success and having that personal brand, having the influence and all that stuff. So I think it's really added it's like a pressure cooker of like being successful.
And let me
not
clarify, because I have friends that might listen to this, and this was not like a targeted thing. I'm not at all against feeling like maybe part of your calling is on social media,
Right.
or
part of the
having a
world.
lot of followers. I know a guy that has like 100,000 followers. I'll drop his name.
Shout out.
Keenan Clark. He's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Like that dude, like he's a content producer, but that's not his goal in life. That's not his end goal in life. Like that's something God's blessed him with. We had a lot of conversations about it, and it actually changed my view and perspective on like pastors who like have a big following like that, because he is genuinely just doing what he feels like God called him to, and you can tell he's like walking in his lane, like what he's supposed to be doing. But I feel like there is this weird thing to where we attach success with like notoriety.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, one, I feel that personally, and I like run the other direction. I like want to delete all my social media accounts. But then two, I'm like, I thought it was just like a pastor thing, but what I'm realizing is it's an everybody thing.
No, just a part of our world now.
Everybody feels like they're not successful if their success doesn't come with notoriety.
Right.
And that's a really, really tough thing. Like, it's just not real. It's not realistic.
A thought I had too is, to what degree is now validation a measurable now of success? Right. Like a post, somebody liking it. Oh, you're being validated over and over and over again. But what if you do something successful based on other standards? It's not seen. It's not validated. Could you, with all integrity, call that success?
Yeah.
Does it feel like success? Like, I think there's some like massive insecurity in our culture nowadays, because if what you do isn't seen or liked by people that matter, is it good?
Is it a success? Can you be successful if nobody else knows you're successful?
Yes. So now, I think people, do you feel it? Like when I go into spaces, I feel like people want to be validated so badly, but like unparalleled levels. Like not just like, oh, I want to be like known in my community and people to tell me that I'm valuable. But I feel like it's like there's just insecurities now, like the state, I think.
Oh,
of the
yeah.
young adult. But not just like, oh, I'm insecure in this area. No, I'm massively insecure, but I can't project that I'm insecure because that's not cool.
Yeah.
And also authenticity is a value, so I need to seem real.
But who am I?
Curate all of that, and you're not authentic, and you're massively insecure.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then it's self-fulfilling. The only way to get security is to post more and to see if more people will.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, your entire identity is in the hands of thousands of strangers.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
it's like
for
a
sure.
never-ending cycle.
It's a never ending
failure because you want to be successful and never having the amount of success that you feel like is out there and attainable.
Yeah.
By comparison.
Yeah.
It's vicious.
How much of this do you feel like is comparison?
Oh.
Like instead of how much of failure is attached to comparison? Because I will say the biggest thing I struggle with is I always sorry, I sound like I was about to cry.
Let it out, Connor.
Okay.
Let it out.
I always compare my worst to other people's best.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a human thing, but I think it's like part of my deep personality where I feel this like deep level of not insignificance, but like I will take somebody's God-given gift and highlight it in comparison to like my lack in that area. And I always feel like to be successful, I must be more like this.
Right.
There's a long period of time. I have finally come to grips and come to terms with I am like an extroverted introvert. I felt like to be successful, I'd have to be a networker. I'd have to like be at all the right green rooms and VIP this and backstage this and make sure I'm seen by the right people, shaking the right hands. And it's because the people that I knew that I saw that I looked up to were naturally just that way, super extroverted. I can't remember somebody's name to save my life. These people can recall names from 10 years ago. It's just something God's given them. And I was like, oh, to be successful, I must then be that. And until I am, I'm like failing in that area. How much do you feel like maybe personally or just broad spectrums, seeing all the conversations you have with young adults and stuff, how heavy does comparison play into a feeling of I'm not where I should be yet?
Everything, I think. I mean, if it's like what Casey said, if you don't have a definition of success, then there's nothing to compare it to. Then just like if you're doing life, you're just satisfied. It's like, oh, making your own way. But if you have like a constant like measurement of around you of other people doing this, or this person making this amount of money, or this person getting married at this age, or these people were dating less than my boyfriend and me, and they're engaged, or whatever your measure of like a successful relationship, a successful job. The comparison like allows you to have that like measuring stick, you know, to be like, this is my definition. Like, how else do we get a definition of success without looking at other people?
Well, and the opposite of that is when people fail, you feel like, oh, good. Right? Like,
But at least I'm not doing as bad as they are.
Well, reality TV, there's like all these articles about how it can improve your mental health.
Because it makes you feel better.
Crap shows. Like, you watch them and you're like, wow, like that person is
Wait, I love reality TV. I'm like, whoa.
No, my roommate watches this show where I'm like, this is garbage.
It's Love Island.
And she's like, let's go on. I can't even. It's just like embarrassing that
it's
I'm like
bad
down there when it's on. And I'm like, I just want to be around people. That's why I'm down here. And I like look up and I'm like, these guys are train wrecks. Like, I feel amazing about myself.
Dang, that's
but
so
I think
true.
That's like a really scary way to look at the people we're called to love and to community.
Yeah.
They're they're just a threat to your security, or they're a gold standard that you need to chase after.
Yeah.
But you objectify them both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like so convicting.
Yeah. We could do a whole nother. God gave me this huge revelation. I say that lightly, but on insecurity.
Yeah.
Because
it's a good one.
I feel like stepping into this like next season of my life, my call, God was like, you're the most insecure person I know. And you need to cut that crap out.
You know a lot of
like
people.
Seriously. And I was like, because we can mask insecurity with like, but I'm humble and I'm not thinking too highly of myself. But it's like, no, you're a baby. Like, you're a baby.
Right. You're
like,
still thinking about yourself.
Be confident in who you are. Be confident, more importantly, in who you're not. And like walk out what I've called you to do. This podcast has not taken the direction I thought it would, but I love it. Do you guys think, we're talking kind of about like maybe this idea of failure versus actually how to bounce back from failure. Maybe we'll cover that in another podcast. A lot of failures, we've said like the world's kind of view of success, kind of define that a little bit of like having the white picket fence, or maybe this just ideal, like married by this time, working this type of career. Am I in the career am I in the career I'm supposed to be in or not? And then also attached to that is my skill and career getting me notoriety? Is it healthy at any time to have a picture, a standard of, we were talking about comparison kind of in like a negative way. Can it be healthy to have, or maybe base your definition of success or failure off of a picture in somebody else's life that you have? Or is that always like a negative thing?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
That's super interesting. I love that, because I think when Casey was talking about it, you can either like idolize them or like consider them as like a threat. And either way, you're objectifying people. But we're made to like work with people and live in harmony and like work the land, you know, if we get into the Bible. And I think people can be like your greatest resource, and people can be like your greatest asset if you let them be. But if like somebody else's success is like an indictment on your own, or if somebody else's failure, you see it as like an opportunity for you to like get ahead. Then comparison is like gonna ruin you. But if you're like using people as like, not using people, but kind of treating people as like a way to help, like just help each other. Like I think of the verse that's like spur one another on into good works. I think in Hebrews, and I'm like that's like the design for us to like work in harmony, to like see like each other's shortcomings and like gifts as an opportunity to like come together and like create something awesome or beautiful, and like find fulfillment or success with other people. And so I think comparison, if you let it like eat you alive, and like you said, like just sit there and be like, well, I'm not this way, and that sucks, and I feel like a failure, and this person's this way, versus being like, that person is like really gifted in this area that I'm not. I wonder if like if I could like learn from them, or they could like help me in this. Like if like someone who's really gifted in administration, not me. But if I wanted to like start a business, I'm going to like, you know, Katie Smith, shout out Katie, to be like, hey, I have this idea. I want it to be successful. Like that's when I think like you can look at yourself and like maybe compare a little and actually use it to, you know.
I think of sports, right? Like for me, I want to be in the hardest league. And do I have weeks where I'm like, I was the worst one out there for sure. Like the slowest, the this, the that, the other. But for me, I think I'm like, oh, I will only get better. I might not feel like I'm getting better because in this context, I clearly am worse.
Yeah.
But if I enter an old context where I was average or I was a certain level, I'll see that I grew.
Yeah.
So I think it involves a degree of humility. But I actually thought of the parable of the talents. Like God gives talents to each of these three men, and the last one only gets one, right? And my first thought would be, why did I only get one?
Yeah.
And what he does, instead of looking at what the other men do with those talents, which they actually take risk.
They try.
They try to multiply it. I'm sure it was not easy. I'm sure it took courage. I'm sure there was some failure involved in that journey, which, by the way, success, they're not linear. Like growth is not linear.
Yeah.
But this man buries it, returns it to God. I knew you to be a cruel man. I knew you to reap where you did not sow. But I'm like, this guy should have looked at the other guys. Like he should have been like, oh, this is what they're doing with God, as what God has given them.
Yeah.
I should go that way as well.
Right.
He could have, though, been so discouraged that he didn't get what they had that he decided to bury and not do anything with what God had given him. And so I'm like, to what degree do we compare and then we're paralyzed?
Yeah. And then you fail anyway.
Then you fail anyway because you did nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Which wasn't risky. Well, which felt like you didn't fail because nothing changed.
You didn't try.
But comparatively, you did.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just that parable has been like haunting me lately in like a million different ways because I'm like, I want to bury it. Like it's such a like public, like we work in public ministry.
Yeah.
Like everything in me wants to like hide in the corner some days and be like, why can't I just work at like a house church and I give a crappy message and the old lady's like, that was bad. And you're like, I'm never going to see you again, Edith. You know?
Edith.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
No, I love that. I Parable of the Talents, God, like when he was telling me how much of a baby I was in like the in like the best way, he pulled that out because one thing that I think is this is totally me reading into the scripture. But I feel like even if the guy with the one talent would have tried and failed, Jesus would have still said, well done.
Right.
Jesus wasn't mad about the amount returned necessarily. He scolded him for not trying.
Right.
And I think that's where so many young adults can get to in their life is that, and we'll jump into a biblical definition of success maybe here in a second, but we are fed like what success should be through social media outlets, friends, whatever. We compare our life to other people's lives and try to derive definitions of success. And all that ends up happening is we get so overwhelmed we never try.
Wow.
And so I think we have like a generation of young adults that have so much talent, but because they feel like excellence has to come with notoriety or followers, or because there's a TikToker who's 25 and has moved to Ibiza. I feel like we have this generation that might be paralyzed to like try things.
Right.
And so, when you're working off of a worldly definition of success, which I feel like can almost be summarized as this, you should at least be one step further along than you already are.
Right.
I feel like if there's like a working definition of like worldly success, it would be you're one step behind. Like to be successful, you just should be one step further. You're 25. You should you should have bought in a place when you're 21. You should own at least a condo by now. Like
anxious even you
no, but like, I mean,
like,
when you're 30, you should at least be married by now. When you're 33, you should at least be in the career that you're going to be in for the rest of your life right now. Like you shouldn't be job hopping anymore, whatever. And it's just not real.
No.
It's just not real. It's not real. The Bible says that I was kind of saving this for the end, but I kind of maybe want to end on like a biblical definition of success. But I used to be so afraid of failing. I had this picture of this like business endeavor in my mind. And I was actually talking to one of my good friends, Doug Weckenman. And And he was kind of like, dude, are you ever going to do this thing that you like talk about? And I had this moment of real honesty with him where I was like, dude, I'm afraid to, because it's perfect in my brain. And if I go to do it, I know it's not going to be perfect and it might fail.
Right.
But I'm 36 years wise, and I have learned throughout like the history of my life. God actually gave me a vision. I've never had a vision before in my life. God gave me a vision and a dream. I won't go into it. I think I've talked about it before. But I think the greatest lives aren't the ones that we cultivate success after success after success. To be successful, you must fail.
Yeah.
And I know it can sound a little cliche, but there's like, I think I'm in a season in my life. My wife might disagree with this. I almost get excited at the idea of like chasing after failure. Like I want to do something so bold that it would truly take an act of God to like succeed. Because either failure directs you into your next thing or you succeed. The only way you fail is if you quit.
Right.
And I mean, the Bible says that Proverbs 24:16, for though a righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. Like the Bible does not, one of the definitions of biblical success isn't not failing. It's just rising again after you fall. And so we've kind of talked about a lot. We've been a little all over the place, which I love. We've shouted out Keenan Clark and his wife, who now live in Tennessee, their little boy. Love those guys. Amazing family. What if the worldly definition of success is that you have to have notoriety, you're just one step behind, you need a little bit more, whatever. How would you say the Bible defines success for people in their life? What would the Bible say is a picture of success that we all should be chasing after, regardless of age, race, gender, profession, career, what have you?
I mean, I feel like Paul talks about it pretty great. Like, run the race set out before you. I mean, if you're a Christian and you're listening to this, you know that the goal of this whole story is to just look more like Jesus.
Yeah.
And to live a life that is spent like running after him, making decisions with him in mind. And it's hard, like as Casey said, it's like we know that like in our brain, like, yeah, but there's all like the worldly pressure. And there is just like a world that we live in where you got to make money to eat, you know, and you need to have a roof over your head and all the things. But at the end of your life, if you don't have the car you wanted, you don't maybe ever meet that person, maybe you don't start the business, maybe you don't do the thing, is Jesus going to be enough?
Yeah.
You know, at the end of your life. And that's like, I think that is kind of it's almost like not a hall pass, but just like the pressure's off of you as a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of have like this cheat code to life where you can like look at people in the like rat race and people who are chasing after this thing, chasing after the money. The bald guys on Instagram that you're talking about that are yelling at you for being lazy and telling you to make your bed at 5 a.m. It's kind of just like, oh, but I know something you don't.
Yeah.
You know, like there is an actual truth to what is considered success and what will earn me jewels in my crown one day. And it looks different than what this world says. Yeah. But even then it's like at the end of your life, is that going to be enough for you?
Yeah.
And you do have to make that switch because it's like, we know.
Yeah.
But also there's like this glaring pressure. But
I think of the song, Oceans.
Yes.
You won't sing it.
No, I can't get up there. I can't get that. But I remember like teenagers were all singing it, and then when you actually look at the lyrics, it's like basically, take me where my trust is without borders, pull me out in the waters.
Just sing it.
Wherever you would call me.
Yeah.
Is asking God to make you somebody who radically trusts him no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if the decisions God calls you to make or the life he calls you to lead on paper for so many other people might look like failure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, my 20s have been, do I actually trust God?
Right.
Do I actually trust his opinion and his leading over every single other one?
Yeah.
My mom, my dad, my best friend, over all of them.
Yeah.
And I think time and time again, I was placed with decisions before me where I had to make that choice.
Yeah.
And if everyone else thought this was a failure to move out
Right.
from California to Colorado to take an unpaid internship and you have a bachelor's degree and you're good at so many other things, Rick Mexico's
So
like,
glad you did
go
that.
into real estate. Please go into real estate. And everyone you love and respect says that that's a failure.
Right.
But Jesus and Jesus alone calls it success. Is my faithfulness and trust of him my working definition based on the decisions I make, not just based on what's going on in my brain.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
what I say I want to stand for. And so
Right.
I think God, because he loves us, will give us a million opportunities and do-overs. We might have moments where we pick not him, you know,
Oh,
and
for
he'll
sure.
give us a million more. But for me, it's faithfulness.
Yeah.
And I want, and like what you said, like I said this the other day in a sermon, I want my life to be, wow, that wouldn't have happened unless Jesus got involved. That
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened. And I listed all these things. And I had a conviction last week where I was like, oh, I said that, but the reality of living that way requires a die to self that
Yeah.
Yeah.
is terrifying. you
Yeah.
know?
Oh,
Right.
1,000%.
But I do want to look back at my life and have it look like that.
Yeah.
I think that
Right.
I would define that as success, not like what you said, getting everything I wanted.
Right. Right. And it's like, Connor, like there's like freedom to fail, like you talked about. Like it's the failing would be not trying.
Yeah.
And that fear of failing is what, like, it's just that other people are going to see that. That like other, like your dad being like, just go into real estate. Like this is a failure. Like don't do that. And it's like, well, then that's just pride. Like
Yeah.
your fear of failure is your fear of man.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what do you fear most? What's more important to you? Whose definition of success is more important to you? That girl you went to high school with, or the guy that's making more money than you that you know? Or is it like, you know, because it's just your pride of like, well, I don't want to fail because I don't want people to know, or I don't want to look bad, or I don't want to look
Yeah.
like a failure. And so it's just,
Yeah.
it's a different definition, I think, when you live with Christ and you like like your faithfulness is considered what is like the driving force of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the sobering reality is that so many people in the Bible are only seen as success after the fact.
Wow.
Like Paul died and probably had no clue the
Right.
impact that he made.
Right.
I mean, he probably did to some extent, but not the way we look at him now.
Right.
You know, he was probably like, yeah, I met Jesus, it was miraculous, and I started some churches, and I hope they're doing well. you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
There was no social media
yeah,
to see.
you know, and we're like, I want a ministry like Paul. And I'm like,
Right.
did Paul really know what he had? Like, I'm sure he
Right.
did to some extent, but I'm sure it wasn't the way that we would think of it as. Yeah, I don't think Paul would have viewed himself the way that we view him. One definition of success that has been really, I think, exposing my heart and my ego, and but also a very, very like sobering thing. This also was part of my Instagram journey. 1 Thessalonians 4:11 and 12 say, make it your aim to live a quiet life. Mind your own business, earn your own living, just as we had told you to do before. In this way, you will win the respect of those who are not believers, and you will not have to depend on anybody for anything that you need. And
That's
I
good.
think that the temptation, and maybe people are like, you church people are freaking weirdos, but like in the church, I think there is this temptation of like, make it your aim to get out there. And when I hear these words like echoing to this church is like, dude, live a quiet life, like run your race. It's like, oh wow, like what if I made like a quiet but intentional impact, like the goal of my life, like my definition of success.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I really think impact and influence can run a lot deeper than like notoriety and the pressure to be seen as successful,
Right.
and not just be successful. And so, man, if I were to like summarize this for a young adult listening who's maybe afraid to fail, and I want to hear your all's hearts, like a quick summary, is this: I don't think Jesus was ever mad at a failure.
Right.
He was mad. What frustrated him was people not trying and getting back up, and doing it again. And we even see when Peter failed, God like reinstated him and called him back. Failure doesn't disqualify you from what Jesus is going to do. All it's going to do is paralyze you. A fear of failure is not going to disqualify. It's going to paralyze you from what God has called you to do. And then, man, make it your aim to live a quiet life. Build something with your life. Like, don't worry about getting notary for your life. Build something with your life.
Yeah.
And I just think that like when you make it your aim to live a quiet life, to follow Jesus, and to know that in theory you can't really fail. You can, but like you can have like moral failures and stuff, but like you can't, like if you can't fail in this life, and the pressure's off. You know what I mean? So I don't know. What are your all closing thoughts?
I think if this one verse like comes to mind, I feel like I've probably mentioned this on this podcast a million times, but it's always applicable. But I love it for young adults. I feel like I'm bringing it up in every meeting ever. Is Psalm 18:36 says, "You have placed a wide path for my steps underneath me, and my feet did not slip." And so I feel like so often, like in this time of being like 20 something, you feel like God's path for you is like a tightrope, and you feel like you're like, if you miss it or if you fall or if you fail, like you're gonna miss out on something. And the Bible, that like nowhere does it say that. Like God placed a wide path beneath you. You have like safety and stability, and God like is able to redirect even if you do fail. And so there's just like, I mean, we said it before, there's just freedom to fail with Jesus. Like our shortcomings only like prove to us even more like our need for a redeemer. And Jesus is just like so readily available to do that for you. And so like you said, like try things. Like now, like if you're young adult listening to this, now is the time to like do it, you know, like his grace is sufficient for you in your weakness, you know, like try things, just do it all. And if something fails, guess what? Try something else. Like do things until it sticks, and don't be afraid, because it's not a tightrope. Like you have freedom to fail with Jesus, and that's like so comforting. Yeah. You know?
I love that. That verse is so good. I have just a couple things. Find people and community that celebrate trying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that if you can find I think your inner critic when you're by yourself, she's a loud gal. My counselor says mine is smoking a cigarette in the caverns of my brain. She's like, you suck, man. But the more you can find voices, mentors, friends, church, your church community, hopefully YA is that.
Yeah.
A culture that celebrates trying. And now all of a sudden, success in your mind is actually being redefined by your church community and by God's word, by the way that people encourage you. And so the word accountability is always used for like, don't sin. But for me, it's people also holding into account like how you live your life based on your ability, based on your talent. And
that's
so
good.
Doug even saying, Connor, have you done that business you're so excited about?
Right.
Doug in that moment is holding you to account for your ability and your dreams and your visions and the things God has
so good.
put on your heart. And so I know that YA has been that for me, and like we hope to create a community that does that, but press in to a community that celebrates trying. Success will slowly be redefined. Because you'll try and you'll be like, I can't wait to tell my community about it because I fell on my face, but they're going to celebrate the trying.
Yeah.
Because if you go off by yourself, it can get real loud, and the cultural definitions can really creep in.
Right.
So find people to hold you accountable for what you can do as well.
It's good.
Yeah, I love it. Well, guys, we are back. The podcast is back. We're going to be finding our sea legs for the next couple of weeks, but we're so excited. We're excited to have Casey a part of the team.
Yeah.
We're excited to continue this. If you want to keep up with the Young Adult Podcast now that we're back and we're going to be more consistent, you can follow us
At Red Rocks YA.
At Red Rocks YA.
Same old.
On Instagram. Also, if this podcast has helped you in any way, shape, or form, please like it. Rate us a 5-star on Apple or on Spotify. If you rate us anything lower, then just don't rate us.
Keep it to yourself.
Don't let your inner pain get us. No, I'm kidding. Don't project. No, but for real, if you find this podcast helpful, or maybe you know somebody who it could help, give it a share, and tune in the next week or two for another podcast.
Yeah.
And if you're in the Denver metro area, come join us on Sundays. We have a Saturday night service at 5:00, and we have a Sunday services at 8:30, 10:15, and 12.
Proud of you.
Look at that. I attend them. I just can't remember when they are.
I was ready for it to help you.
Yeah. And come to Young Adults on Thursday nights. Our Lakewood campus at 7:00 every Thursday. So love you guys. We'll see you again soon. Bye.